All right, today's podcast is a little different because I'm actually the one who's being interviewed, and so it's kind of different to be on the other side of the mic, so to speak. And you see, do I let much out? Nah, not really. So you have to listen to all the podcasts to get the inside scoop. But what we did talk about with Eric Rhoads, and this is for his podcast, which is Plein Air Podcast, which is a wonderful podcast, by the way, and he's done over 200 interviews of artists. And so for me to be on it was really quite an honor because he normally only does artists and not an art dealer. But he kind of wanted to get a sense of what it was like from my end handling artists and what I think and how I approach the art business. And so we really talked a great deal about that, what artists should expect to see if they go to an art gallery and what are the expectations of an art gallerist for the artist. So it was fun. I enjoyed it. And so you can hear this on my podcast, which is the Art Dealer Diaries, clearly, or go to Plein Air Podcast and you can hear it there and see it. So Plein Air Podcast with Mark Sublette on the Art Dealer Diaries.
I think we should go right to our interview with Mark Sublette. Mark, welcome to the Plein Air Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me, Eric. Nice to be on the other side of the camera.
Well, this is a first. Now, when I was on your podcast, you recorded in video, and my podcast has always been audio only. But you insisted that you have video so you can play it back. So we're actually we're going to do it both. We're going to play it on audio and video for this time around.
Yeah, well, when you do it in video, they can look into your eyes and they know if you're really telling the truth or not. So it takes it all away. It's a new world, Eric.
Yeah, it sure is. Mark, I was trying to remember when you and I first met. It had to have been at the very early stages of Plein Air magazine, probably 13 or 15 years ago. Do you remember that?
Yeah, for sure it was. Because I remember I advertised. I think I was probably in your initial advertising for that magazine. Yeah, it was kind of revolutionary, actually, that you were doing it at that time. And it seemed like a niche that needed to be filled. And clearly it was, because here you are anywhere between 13 and 10 years later, and you're still going strong. So congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. It's been pretty interesting, to what I never expected is that Plein Air would become the #1 selling art magazine in America at Barnes and Noble. And I don't know why. I have no idea and I think the reason is, I have a theory. I think the reason is we don't put any type on the images. We just put a big picture on the front. And I want to respect the artist and not put type on top of their pictures. And I think that's probably why it sells so well.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I also think possibly just because everyone who has ever wanted to be an artist can go, wow, that would be something I would like to do. And they can if they want to put the effort.
Yeah. Well, let's, before we get into this, because I'd like to get your thoughts and feelings about the whole Plein Air movement and what's happening. Why don't you give everybody a brief background? You used to be a physician, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, still am, in the sense that you don't ever lose it. I retired a few years back as far as my license, but yeah, no, I was a physician, and I knew I was in trouble when the side of my bed was all the catalogs that I used to read were like New England Journal of Medicine. I had all these medical journals that were all piled up, and that pile just slowly went away. And the other pile was now art magazines, Native American things, all the books related to the arts. And that was a hint that I was like, okay, maybe my brain is somewhere else than where I thought it was. I loved medicine, but it's not the same as the art world. I always say that medicine was like a girlfriend, but the art world is my wife.
So had you become a collector when you were, and that's how it all began?
Yeah, it was, I grew up having Native American art around me in New Mexico. And I was a collector, literally a collector. And I just found that what I started doing was buying and selling things to increase my collection. And it turned out I was good at that. I was like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this. I can increase my collection. And I still call myself a collector. I still feel like I'm a collector as much as anything. I continue to buy things for my own collection it seems like a weekly basis. It's really, really extreme, but I can't help myself.
That was going to be my next question. What is your personal collection like?
Well, my personal collection is literally like my gallery. You know, if you walked into my gallery and looked on the walls, you would see it. It's, you know, it's a combination of Native American art. It's a combination of Western paintings, Native American paintings. I also have contemporary art. I collect abstract art. So I have deceased, I have living, pretty much all the gallery artists that I have in my collection as well. I've always felt it's important, if you're going to sell art to the public, you damn well should be wanting to put it in your own collection. It should be move you enough that you want to put it in your own collection. So the artists that I have in my home are, you know, people that I collect and sell. And so, and it's not just, you know, the artists that I collect, by the way, or sell in my gallery. I have lots that I buy from other places that I just like the art.
So what's the one that you would grab if there was a fire and you could only grab one?
I'd grab my kids' paintings. That would be number one.
Yeah, you know, that's really an interesting, that's probably right. I hadn't thought about that, but that probably is more meaningful than anything because of the memories of family.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but there's, you know, as far as which one I would actually go as a thing, it's impossible to know. I don't think I would think in those terms, honestly. I would be thinking, you know, survival and, you know, the things that have more deeper meaning in the sense of family and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I have, you know, hundreds of paintings in my house, so it would be a tough choice.
Do you want to give us your address right now so everybody knows exactly?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The gallery's address is 6872 East Sunrise Drive, Tucson, Arizona.
So this is kind of a sidetrack, but I think I'll ask it anyway, because, you know, I get questions about insurance. How do you insure a collection? Do you have to have constant updates on appraisals on every piece that's in a collection? How do you do that?
So, you know, a personal collection versus a gallery are two different things. In a personal collection, often you have to itemize each piece and you have to have it listed. But for a gallery, you don't have to do that. It's a dollar amount. So you have X amount of dollars and, you know, that'll cover that amount. So they're two different things.
So you became a collector. When did you first open your gallery?
So I opened my gallery in 1992. So whatever that is, going on 28 years, 29 years. Yeah, 29 years. And but I was buying and selling before I opened the gallery, actually. For 3 or 4 years before that, I had a license and I was buying and selling, but the actual gallery was like 1992.
And did you quit your physician work in the beginning, or did you do both?
I quit pretty quickly. Yeah, right after I opened it, I think maybe I continued for 6 months more as far as actually going to the office as I needed to, but I had to be in the gallery to try to make a go of it, right? So I had no idea what a gallerist made, never looked, you know, first of all, there was no internet, right? So I didn't have a way to research other than maybe going to a library, which I didn't do. I just figured if I could, you know, make 30,000 a year or so, I'd be happy and I'd want to do it. And my goal was to, you know, give it 3 years. If I could make it in 3 years, then I felt like I could make a go of it. And so the first year I lost money, second year I broke even, the third year I made a little. So
that's pretty spectacular, actually. Now, there's a high failure rate among galleries. Why is that?
I think there's a high rate of failure among businesses, right? 50% of all businesses fail. So a gallery is no different than any other business in the sense that you have to have good business skills. One, you have to have location, all these components. And most people don't think those things out. It's good if you have some capital, so you have some longevity. A lot of people don't have enough longevity. They say, I'll open and I'll do fine. And, you know, you need a runway. You got to have, I say, a 5-year runway minimum. And really, for most galleries, and me included, it takes 10 years before you are really considered to be trustworthy to some extent, because there is this trust factor that goes on between artists, art dealers, and collectors. Collectors want to make sure you're going to be in the game still. They don't want you to sell them something and then they're gone. I remember Howard Post, who was one of my first artists to come on board. You know, I remember him asking me, are you going to be in business in 2 years? You know, that's a legitimate question to ask, especially from a guy like that, because he was a high-powered artist even in those days. And he's taking a risk as well, coming to show with a gallery who may or may not do well. I might have talked a good storm and said, I'm going to do great and I'm really into it. But, his concern is, okay, is this guy just going to go back to practicing medicine and I've just wasted time, energy, and didn't put my effort into a gallery that really is going to promote my work and take me to the next level? So I think it's a legitimate question for artists to ask. How long have you been in business? And, what are your aspirations as a dealer in a gallery? Well, how are you going to promote me and those kind of things? A lot of times they don't. They're just happy they got in, but it should be more than that.
That reminds me, when I was first launching the magazine, I went out and I met with Ira Spanierman in New York, famous gallerist at the time, and he was kind of a old crotchety guy, and he said, I sat there and I gave him my pitch, and he said, "Come back. If you've been in business in 10 years, you get to sit in this chair and pitch me."
Well, see, there's the deal. It's the 10-year thing, even me. And that's true too. Other gallerists don't really want to work with you or do things as much because they're afraid you're going to be gone too. Or, they give you something to sell and you're gone the next week and next year and they don't get paid. And, so unfortunately, there is this longevity component, I think, with galleries that does exist. Doesn't mean it has to be everyone. There's galleries that can come on strong and do well and, or probably have a good business sense to start with. But, if you're going to be dealing with artists, especially living artists, you've got to get them to come on board. Why should they come on board with you and not someone else? There's got to, especially if they're good and well recognized, why do they want to go to you? So that's the longevity part. Now it's easy.
Go ahead.
As I say, now it's easy to get artists to some extent. In fact, it's a problem because, so many artists need gallerists that, I get somebody contacting me almost every day that needs representation. And I take somebody maybe every 2 years.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because I think that's an important thing for artists to understand, is that you have, that 10-year idea also applies to artists to some extent. There's this essence of, when is an artist ready? When is their brand ready? When are they developed enough? And now there's different levels of galleries. There's high-level galleries like yours, and there's mid-level and lower level and so on. And so certain ones will take people earlier. But what should an artist be doing to develop themselves, grow their brand, and make sure that they are credible so that you're willing to take them on? Is it all about painting? Is it only about painting?
I wish it was, honestly. I think that would be, I really do. I wish it was all about painting, in the sense that, that's the first thing I look at. I try not to get sucked into all this, look what I've done, look who I am kind of stuff. I really do like to look at the artwork, because sometimes you go, I don't know who this individual is, but they're fantastic. And that's where I think a true gallerist really shows their merit. If they can, it should be like The Voice, right? You shouldn't look at anything but the artwork. And if you can do that as a gallery owner and really use that as your primary focus, you're going to have a wonderful stable of artists. Now, having said that, most of them don't do that, okay? Because it is a business, and unfortunately, some of them look at it as a product. I try never to do that, but some do. And so they're looking for other things. So if I was an artist, the things, every artist has its components. If it's a beginning, middle, high end, they all have, different routes. But if I was a beginning artist, if I were them, the first thing I would do is I promote myself tremendously. I would do things like Plein Air Magazine, run ads in your magazine. I think it's important. Get your brand out there, start your brand, do Instagram, do Facebook, do TikTok, start a YouTube video channel, get on podcasts, and of course, paint or sculpt and work on your craft as well. Network with other artists. Most artists, I think a lot of gallerists take artists from recommendations from other artists that they have. So Francis Livingston, recommended Dennis Szymanski. Dennis Szymanski had also advertised in Southwest Art. I already recognized Dennis's work from what he had done on his own. And then Francis says, yeah, he's really great. I'm going to take that into consideration, so talk to if you're an artist and one of your friends is in a good gallery and they feel like you have the the ability to be in that same gallery, ask them if they'll recommend the Gallerist, because that's a very good way. And get a website too, please, because
And what are the things that spook you? What are the things that drive you away? If you're looking at an artist, I would assume one of them would be consistency of work. You see one great painting and you go, aha, this is a great painter. And then you look at the website and you see that 80% of the things up there are not all that good. What else spooks you?
Well, just back to the Dennis Saminsky, analog that we were discussing. When he came in to show me his work, I saw what he had shown. And it was really a great painting. And I said, bring everything, because I wanted to see what everything is. I don't want to see one. Anybody can get one good painting off, but it's the body of work. So he brought them all in, probably 25 paintings, laid them all in my gallery, and they were all fantastic. And I said, that's great. I want the work. And he goes, well, which ones? I go, I want the work. I want it all. It was great. So you're right. It's very important to be consistent. As far as what turns me off, it's my own thing, but when an artist approaches me and tells me how much they sell and how good their sales are and how much they're making, that's not for me. That doesn't make me go, oh, great. I'd rather know, what excites you.
Well, I guess, if you use that argument, you could say that Thomas Kinkade sold a lot of art, and
exactly.
Not to be disparaging about that, but in terms of the style or the quality of art, there are a lot of artists who sell art who would not necessarily be of the quality that you would put in your gallery.
Exactly. And I've turned some of those down, but their leading line is, this is how much I'm selling. Yeah. And that's, and that needs to go to somebody who is really more interested in just selling and making money on a product. I'm more interested in relationships and what I can do in the long term for artists, and seeing them grow as a artist and seeing their work getting appreciated. I've been doing it long enough to really be able to do that now, and getting artists in museums. So I have a different mindset. I don't know if I think I'm probably unusual in that aspect. But that's for me personally. Yeah. When I hear that, I'm like, great.
Can you identify, is there a way to articulate what quality is when you see the kind of quality that you're looking for? Or is it just, I know it when I see it?
Well, I think it is. It is. I know it when I see it. It really is. I mean, it's like, why are you attracted to a spouse or a mate or whatever? What is that? It may be completely different from what someone else thinks is beauty, right? And for you, it hits on all components. For me, it's composition, unique voice, color. And the most important for me is unique voice. I see something different that I could recognize that artist's work anywhere. And I think all my artists have that ability, that if I look at them a block away, I can see that, okay, I know who that is. You're not going to not recognize a Howard Post painting. I mean, no one paints like Howard. He has this very unique sense of color, and his compositions are unique. And, and that would stay true for all the artists that I represent, I think. And the same with Plein Air, let me say too, because they have their own sensibilities. I mean, a Matt Smith's a Matt Smith, right? I mean, you can see it a mile away, and same with a Josh Elliott or a John Moyers. They have their own sense of style. Jill Carver, I mean, her unique ephemerate kind of sensibilities that she has with her paintings, so, I'm looking for that unique voice, that they've gone through the process. They've edited themselves. They figured out who they are as a person, and now are very confident in their skin. And that takes a while, often. Not always. Glenn Dean was, doing it right off the bat, but not.
What do you mean they've edited themselves?
That they what?
You said they've edited themselves. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, they've edited themselves. In other words, they found who they are. They've gone through the process of trying different styles. They've tried different things that they think might sell, and then they ultimately come to the conclusion, this is who I am, this is what I paint, and I'm okay with that, and that's where I'm going. That's the road I'm going down. And once you get to that point, then all of us, if you're trying to be Matt Smith or Ray Roberts, you're not being you, because they already are who they are. And they're great teachers and you can learn a lot, and they'll tell you, I'm sure themselves, you've got to find your own voice of how you see the world. That means your own, how much in your palette are you going to use? How many colors are you going to use? How fast are you going to make it? Are you quick and fast like a John Moyers? Are you much more tighter like his wife, Terry? I mean, it's, and you can see it just like Dixon. You could see it even in Maynard Dixon's work. I mean, his earlier stuff, you could see where he's trying to figure out who he is and what he is. And then pretty quickly he finds himself. And even he, changed his colors over a period of time. And, in the early teens, he was much more brighter. And then he went to a little more flat and less colors. And then at the end, he was using less colors and was much more flat. So,
So that raises a question. So you talk about, and you're probably the foremost expert on Dixon. So if an artist goes through their career and they start out in one direction, they end up in another direction, that direction is what has made them famous. What is the value of those earlier paintings equivalent just because of the name and you're showing their progress through their life, their different phases, or is it the Maynard Dixon that Maynard became that everybody wants?
Yeah, so it's a tricky question because every artist is different, right? So some artists are hitting it right on the money early, like Ed Mell. Ed Mell's early work is worth just as much as his later work, and it's much more simplistic. His really early work. Dixon, he's unusual that his work is really pretty much consistently valued from early work to the end. Though there are periods of time that he was really hitting on all cylinders, 1923, 1927, 1931, those were all 1935, all those were timeframes that he was really doing well. Often what you'll see is at least this is anecdotally, I think, is that you'll see artists between 40 and 70 will really kind of that's their prime time. Often when they get into the older time frame in their 80s, or 90s, they may have lost color sense or composition or just can't do the big ones. Though you have somebody like Wayne Thiebaud and Gregory Condos who both painted, and Wayne Thiebaud's still painting, he's 100. Gregory just passed and he was still painting in his 90s and doing beautiful stuff. So there are generally, for deceased artists, over time, there will be recognized as certain periods in that artist that are maybe more desirable, more collectible. They may not be better paintings, but more desirable or collectible. And you can have somebody like a Howard Turpning who brings $1 million, but his early work of illustrations, one just sold for like $7,000 because it's really not what he's known for. So often, the painting of a type is more valuable, for certain artists, and that can change. And Wayne John and Terry Moyers paint these wonderful Hawaiian scenes, which they're not known for, but I could easily see them being the premier Hawaiian painters in the world if they wanted to be. So
I once had a gallery owner come to me and say, he was telling me about a young artist that he got. He said, the best part about this artist is that I can make money on him for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
Different mindset.
Yeah. Different mindset. Well, it is fun having a younger artist that's really has some, who's good, because you can help guide them, and you can help them with things that they might not know, like get good frames, start a good frame, make it your frame, even things like signature. How are you signing? And these are some things that maybe you want to work on, and, and here's a pathway that I see, that you can do, and those kind of things. So there are some real fun things when you get a younger artist that, will listen, and all the ones I have really pretty much fall into that. And
well, let's probe that one. Let's probe the signature thing, because that should be easy. What is it? What kind of advice do you give a young artist about their signature?
So I'll go back to Maynard Dixon, right? When he's starting to do his thing early on, he's struggling. He doesn't know how to do it. He starts with LMD, this kind of, letters interlocking. Then he goes to L Maynard Dixon. Then he goes to Maynard Dixon. Then he adds a Thunderbird. And, it took him a while to figure it out. One of the things I would say again, it may just be me, but I don't think it is. When they start doing their signature, one, it would be nice if you make it recognizable. In other words, you can actually read it. Sometimes it doesn't matter. You can be so iconic, like an Ed Mel, what that scribble looks like, and it'll always be known. But others, I get people contacting me all the time, sending me a picture of a really good painting, and I have no idea who that artist is because I can't read their signature.
This is a pet peeve of mine. This is a real problem. You have people who scribble, and that 100 years from now or 50 years from now, somebody's looking at it, they don't know who it is. At least put your name on the back of the painting. Yes.
Exactly. Name and title and inventory. Keep a list of all your paintings, artists, because I think it's really important for the long run on many levels. And at some point in time, you're going to want to put these into blockchain, which is another podcast. But you're going to want to have everything in a blockchain, so you'll have all your provenance, all the history, and they'll be documented. The other thing,
are you doing anything with NFTs right now?
I am working with things on NFTs right now. I actually am working with a blockchain company, and we're working on developing something for artists and NFTs. There's things out there already, clearly, like Rarible and OpenSea and things like that. But it is going to be a real thing. Don't think it isn't. It is a real thing.
No, I don't think it is a passing fad, and I think it's going to have a huge impact on the best impact, I think, of this is that right now we have a situation where, legally speaking, I believe, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, is that an artist technically is supposed to get some form of commission, even if their painting is sold again and again. In an NFT environment, they'll always make money on it. Their heirs will always make money on it, no matter who it passes on to.
Well, there's with an NFT, which is a blockchain, you can make a smart contract. And so a smart contract is what you're describing. So it doesn't have to be set up that way. An artist doesn't have to set it up that way.
If you want 10% for forever, you'll get it.
Yeah, you can set up a smart contract where that is the rules and the thing, and that will be set in the blockchain. Absolutely. And which, of course, all artists are like, yeah, this is fantastic. So, those are some of the components that are going to be important with the future, which the future's here, by the way. I mean, the future's now. But if I was a young artist right now, I'd want to find out about blockchain. I'd want to start thinking about NFTs for my paintings. I'd want to start thinking about documenting all the provenance and history and knowing where things go and that kind of stuff, which can be sometimes hard if you're selling through a gallerist, because they may or may not give you the information, but as where it goes and that kind of stuff. But you can at least document your paintings and have a record of them. As far as signature, as we were discussing, I think big, huge signatures that or monograms that overtake the painting and take your eye away from the imagery are not good. I think they should be blended in and smaller. Josh Elliott does a beautiful example of how he does his. And I just had this discussion with an artist the other day and recommended him quit doing what he's doing because my eye keeps going to that place, and he's younger and he's going to work on doing that, or sign it on the back. Jeff Ailing signs all his paintings on the back. He works on Masonite, the title and things are there. He does that because he doesn't want to take away from the image, just like George O'Keeffe didn't want to take away from the image. A lot of artists, especially contemporary modern artists, don't want their signature being over to have anything to do with their painting. They feel like it takes away.
What about the date? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
All of a sudden it's an old painting.
Exactly. And I think it's important to date them for you in your log. I'm not so sure it's from a sales point, it may not be the best thing because you do have to explain why is this 2016 and you're selling it now. There can be a lot of reasons. One, it just was set in the artist studio because they loved it. Maybe it didn't sell. There's all sorts of reasons. So, I leave that up to the artist. Personally, from just pure sales, I think it's easier not to have a date because it does open those, as long as you're documenting some kind of inventory number where these are dated, because in the future it may be very important. Dixon was very good about dating, and it made it a lot easier, and he kept a log from 1915 to 1946. So
In my art marketing classes at the Plein Air Convention, I oftentimes tell people to tell their story on the back of the painting. If I'm painting, I was out this summer painting with C.W. Mundy and some other friends, and we all painted in the same area. So I wrote on the back of the painting, here's where I was, that, I was painting next to C.W. Mundy and Rick Wilson and John McDonald and so on, because I thought and nobody's going to care about my paintings historically, but if they found all of those paintings and they realized they're all painted side by side, it could have some meaning. How do you feel about telling those stories?
yeah, I think it's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, I've had to do the research on when working with Dixon on some of the people that he painted with. It's clearly the same image, same time frame, same date, but there's no record of it. I'm, next with Dixon, other than the imagery. So yeah, those are wonderful things to do, and people may find them interesting. I think another thing you have to be careful with is titles, that some titles can help a painting to sell and some can actually hurt it. So
give me an example.
A great title would be like Cloud World, right? From Maynard Dixon, Shapes of Fear. They describe what it is, though. The Big Tuba Player might not be such a good title, or Dante's Hell, or something that is so has such a negative connotation that, I mean, you could do it, but it may hurt the painting. Or if it's so descriptive that in the sense that people go, I thought it was this, and now I see it as that, and I'm not interested. I think sometimes a little more floral title, and not so, a very specific place, Utah, 1943, double window, versus, Canyonlands. Those are.
Yeah, I have a painting that hangs in my sister-in-law's house, and everybody who walks in says, I know exactly where it is. But none of them are correct. But they're going back to their memory bank, and it's
right.
There's an emotional connection. How important is that emotional connection in the purchase of art?
I think it's very important. I mean, it's even important to me, right? I buy things that were a moment in time, and I think that for whatever reason it connected. It could be the moment as much as the painting. So those things definitely have meaning. And I bought a wonderful painting that was a Hawaiian person not too long ago, and it reminds me of Hawaii, and it's early, and it's a Madge Tennant, and she was doing this great stuff in the 40s, and but when I see it, I see Hawaii, I smell the ocean, I see the light, I know where she was, I feel the people. Yeah, I think an emotional connection is critical. In fact, I don't think I could buy a piece that didn't have that, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. So talk to me about the plein air movement. What are the pros and cons? We have more people painting outdoors together or in general than we probably ever have in history. We have more events than ever existed. When I first met you, when I first started Plein Air Magazine, there probably were 5 or 6 events, maybe not even that many. Now there are 300, 400. You've got lots of artists who are on the circuit. You've got a lot of people who want to be. What are the pros and cons? What advice would you give people about participation?
Well, I think I would approach it, when you say pros and cons, as an art dealer. Okay, so let me just talk as an art dealer versus a collector of myself, because what are the things that I see are good or bad? Well, first of all, you better have a unique style. In other words, you better have your own vision. You better be a Ray Roberts, a Matt Smith, a Josh Elliott, a John Moyers, a Terry Kelly. You better have something that is recognizable as you, and not working in a style that I can't tell who you are, so those are important. I think, and if you can do that, then you found something, right? And a lot of times the plein air paintings are smaller, not always. Gregory Hull works very large. Louise McElwain was a plein air painter, really. And, they can work large. Some people can work large. But from a sales point of view, if all your paintings are 10 by 14 and your big one's 16 by 20, that's harder for sales. For one, they get lost. People need bigger things. Not everybody can look at a small painting and go, oh, this is something that will fill my space, or this is something I like it, but it's not big enough. So I think you do need to have to be able to paint large, or at least take those images that you have, and if you translate them in the studio, like a Glenn Dean does, or a Josh Elliott or Logan Hajej, those individuals are taking their small paintings and turning plein air paintings and turning them into large paintings.
How large is too large? I mean,
Hundreds.
because
There is no, for me, I like big paintings, and I like them because I know an artist can only do so many large works in their lifetime.
right.
And I feel privileged to be able to have one of those paintings that took them maybe months to have. So for me, there is no limit of size. But from a standpoint of where does it become more difficult to sell, I think probably over, maybe 5 by 6 is probably kind of the limit to where it starts. But I've sold, David Mickles, we sold like a 4 by 10 foot painting, and I just said, do the biggest you can, I'll sell it. And I did. I mean, who wouldn't want it,
Well, I was at an auction. I ended up buying a very big painting from a very famous artist, and nobody bid on it because it was so big.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they're thinking, now this was not a Sotheby's, so this was more of a private auction thing, but it was, I think there's like, where am I possibly going to hang this thing? You got to have a big space for that. So that's why.
Yeah, that is an issue as an artist. I mean, we did a show with Stephen Datz a couple of years ago, and we only had like 8 paintings, and they were all very large. And it's very scary for the artist too, because we were just said, let's do big work and see, and they all sold. But it is scary for the artist to put them out there all that time and energy, and then maybe they don't sell. But for me, I mean, anything 30, 40, 40, 50 or below, those are fantastic. I'd rather have one 40, 50 than a 20 16 by 20s. Because I know how much effort went into it and how much time and how hard that is. And the plein air studies can also be a nice way to show, especially if you do a video or if you put it in the show, this is where it came from. There was work that had to go into making this painting. I didn't just go and say, oh, here's a nice idea, I took a photo and that's it. No, I went out at sunset when it was freezing and captured this moment in time. And you can see that I was able to translate that onto a big painting. And that takes skill set. I love to see that, actually.
I've noticed some regional trends. I'm recording this now in the Adirondacks, and up in the Vermont area, northeast corner of America, I see a lot of painters out there with 30 by 40s, big canvases, doing them on location. Sometimes coming back 2 and 3 times, to do them. And so I think it depends on the region. I'm not seeing a lot of people painting really large outdoors, so I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah, Louisa McElwain did all her paintings that way. They were all, and Gregory Hull, I think, does to a great extent. Maynard Dixon did one. He normally never did that, but he did Dear Heaven out, and it's a 40 by 50, and he did a study. He did a plein air study, and he also did the painting out there in the field. So, and I'm not sure why, but he did.
Well, I can tell you exactly why. I'm working on a 40 by 50 right now, and I've got a photo reference and a plein air study, and I'm struggling, and I want to take that painting back to the location, and and it's a big painting. It's not exactly easy to carry up the top of a mountain, but I want to take it up there because I want to make sure that I'm capturing the sense of air and light, because I can't always get that from a photo.
Yeah, and the plein air painting he did doesn't capture the essence, I don't think, and that may be exactly correct. And that painting ended up winning a major award during his time in 1930s. So clearly it worked for him. So yeah, I mean, I would like to see more work done like that is larger. And I think it's in there. I think it's an artist's advantage to do that because, one, they'll make more money because it's by size. Generally, paintings are sold by size, almost always. And I think there's more demand for that. So I would say that would be one of the limiting things that I can see if you just do small work, that you're going to limit yourself. You're going to need to, more than likely, you're going to limit yourself. Again, you have somebody like Matt Smith. I mean, who doesn't want a small Matt Smith? I mean, they're so amazing.
They're so amazing. So how do you feel as a gallery owner about all these hundreds of plein air events that are out there where people are selling art? Do you think is that hurt your business in any way? Is it good for you? Does it matter?
I think it probably hurts some businesses for sure. For me, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're competing all the time with lots of things, right? I mean, with an artist's website, their Instagram account, all the museums that have shows. So, I mean, we're competing with lots of things all the time. A plein air show like that, no, in fact, it might even help me in the sense that an artist is found at one of these. I'm not doing all the work and heavy lifting. They find the person, they get to meet the person, which is really critically important if they, so they make a connection. So now all of a sudden they are a fan of this artist, and if the artist knows what they're doing, they'll say, yeah, my gallery is X, and you can see more of my work there. That's a win-win for the artist, the collector, and the gallerist, because the gallery is now getting a referral from a client they didn't have to do. The artist sold something, and it's working in partnership, which is what they should. A gallery and an artist should have a partnership. It should be like a marriage. It should be really in those terms, in my opinion.
So I've heard a lot of pretty disgusting stories lately about artists who have violated that gallery relationship, who have gone around the gallery. You ever have that happen? And what's your best advice to artists?
Well, I think if you want to have a long-term serious relationship with a gallery, then you don't want to do that, because most gallerists will probably just say, I'm done, right? They'll just say, you can't do that, and they'll just cut them off. Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes artists really don't understand the ethics. But then others are like Greg Newbold had somebody that one of my clients call him and wanted something. He immediately calls me and says, here's, we want to make sure we go through you. So, and all my artists, I think, are good about that. It's important. I haven't ever let an artist go because of that. Occasionally it does happen, but innocently, or they didn't know, or sometimes, it's just a situation where they needed money or whatever. But generally, all the artists that I represent realize that I'm spending lots of money, energy, effort, rent, website, all that stuff to help promote them. And if they, are always going through their own website or their own Instagram, especially if they're already my clients, that's the big one. Then that's a problem. And so I think smart artists will recognize this if they want to work in the gallery. Now, you don't have to work with a gallery. The world is changing, and it has changed and will continue to change. There are ways, I think today, you could be a very good gallery, a very good artist, and have no gallery, just doing it yourself. But it's going to take time away from what you really were meant to do, which is paint and create. And you're going to have that skill set to be able to do well. And in general, I would say it's not, I would not recommend it, but it can easily be done and done well. Mark Maggiore doesn't probably need a gallery. Ed Mell probably doesn't need a gallery, but they still have galleries. Though, again, the way things are changing, you may not have to, and it'll be interesting.
But a gallery has so much that people don't really stop to think about. You have relationships, sometimes in your case, 20, 30-year relationships with collectors. You can help someone, you can launch a career and help them become collected. This is much more difficult to do on your own. We do have a world where, because of social media, we can sell direct, we can do a lot of things. And I think it's a beautiful thing, but it's not going to be for everybody. I think that the curator is really a critical piece that still remains, because it's about trust. There's I still hear horror stories about people buying paintings online that were fakes. I came very close to it myself one time, and so I think that it's a blend. You gotta figure out what's right for you. But I think if you can get a good gallerist working for you, what's nice about that is they're working for you when you're sleeping, or when you're painting. Somebody else is out there selling your work for you, and you're not having to do that. I teach artists how to sell paintings and how to work with galleries and how not to work with galleries. But ultimately, anybody who can either have an agent doing that for them or have a gallery doing it for them, they're going to be able to get more painting done and not have to stress out about doing all of it themselves.
Yeah, and if it's a good gallerist, they're getting them in museum collections. I just placed a nice painting in a museum this last week. I mean, they're working with the museums. They're trying to help build your career and not just sell a piece of art. The other thing I would say, if I were an artist looking at a gallery, the first thing I would look at is what the gallery social media is. How good is that? How is their website? Is it good? Is it current? Are they putting out good information? Do they have other platforms? I think that is as much has as much importance in today's world as it does. Do you have a big space in Santa Fe or Tucson or wherever? I mean, those are important. But if you haven't invested the time, energy, or money into your website, I mean, you're only buying part of the gallery, because that is a critical component.
We went to the website of somebody we were considering doing one of our videos with, and the website, it had a button that said "Enter here." Remember that from the early stages of websites? And
1996.
And that it hadn't been updated in 5 years, and our first reaction is, if they don't care enough about updating their website, are they going to be somebody good to work with? You have to really think twice about that, especially in this world. Well, Mark, this has been a delight. We'll have to do this again sometime. I'm going to do a marketing minute. Do you want to join me on this and help me answer some questions?
I'll try.
All right. Well, let's get the intro here.
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art: Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
All right. Well, we have a special guest with us today on the Marketing Minute. Mark Sublette, who's a gallery owner in Tucson, Arizona, is going to be on with us. For those of you listening on the Marketing Minute podcast, here's a question from Ashton B. in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who asks, if you're working with several, this is good timing. If you're working with several art galleries, how do you decide which gallery gets which paintings? Mark, you want to address that one?
Yeah. Well, first of all,
to me, right?
Yeah. No, not necessarily. If they, for instance, let's say they're working with me and somebody that's in, let's say, Jackson Hole, they'd be smarter to get the material that is related to the Jackson Hole area, i.e. the Tetons, versus sending them Saguaros, right? Send me Saguaros. Now, they should have a working relationship with the gallerist, and they should be able to say, oh, I do well with this, I don't do well with that. And then the other thing is that, if let's say you paint the same kind of subject matter, and it's the galleries are not really different in the locations, who's doing the better job for you, right? I mean, reward the gallerists that are making the sales and promoting you, whoever that is. If you have one gallery that's doing really well for you, they should get more. I mean, until the other gallery steps up and does well, or comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to do this, I'd like to get more paintings, and here's my plan. If they're not doing that, if they're just saying, give me stuff, then, go with the person who's doing a better job.
Do you ever get a painting, somebody sends you a painting and you're like cringe when you see it, and you wish that you didn't even have to worry about selling it, or do you, not hang it, or how do you deal with a situation like that?
Well, unfortunately, most of my artists are so good that, that even a painting that I might not particularly care for, usually sells. But, I had one that was a subject matter, which just seemed like there would be no way I could sell it, but somebody found it perfect for them because that's what the subject they liked.
Yeah.
And so you just don't realize that just because your taste as a gallerist might be X, some subject matter may be quite desirable that you just don't recognize. So I let I don't ever really try to push my artists to do X or this. I just say, give me your best work. I'm happy.
Yeah, I would say, what I do is I send pictures first. I'll say, I'll pick somebody that I think it's a fit for, and I'll send it to them, and I'll say, is this something you want? And sometimes they'll say no, sometimes they say yes. And so I think that right off the bat kind of solves that problem. And then, and I think the regional thing is huge, right? Adirondack paintings don't do well in the desert.
Nope, they're not.
Nope.
Yeah, send those to you.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So the next question comes from Joe Eisenhart in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Speaking of the West, Joe says, are there businesses that hire freelance plein air painters? I've never heard of that. Well, I have heard of that, actually. I'll try to address that first. There's a big thing right now, plein air weddings. This is, I'm hearing from and seeing a lot of people doing this, where they're hiring a plein air painter to come in and paint at a wedding or at a reception. It's kind of a thing right now. And artists are getting paid. One artist told me they got flown to France. This was pre-COVID. They got flown to France, and they were paid some ridiculous amount of money, because weddings, people like to spend money. And they did a painting of the wedding while it was taking place. And, usually what they do is they go in there and they kind of paint in all the background and everything first. And then, they paint their figures in last when the wedding's going on. I've never heard of businesses hiring freelance plein air painters. What about you, Mark? You heard anything about that?
Never heard about it ever, but I think that's a great idea for the weddings. I think you could make a complete career doing that if you like those kind of things. I mean, it would be, I could see it. I definitely could see it, but no, I've never heard of it.
No, I never have either, but I think there's something interesting in that. There is somebody who pointed out to me that they've put themselves out there they're in a convention city like San Diego or something, and they do these plein air retreats. If somebody's coming in for a convention and they want a company bonding meeting, they'll set them up with 40 or 50 easels. They'll give them a lesson, and they make good money from that. But that's an interesting question. It raises some good ideas. So anyway, that's the Marketing Minute.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
All right, we're going to say goodbye to Mark Sublette right now. Thank you, Mark, for being on today. And I'm going to finish up the podcast here. Thanks for participating in the Marketing Minute. It was terrific. Now, I just want to say as a reminder, a couple of things.
We need your support for the Medicine Man Gallery channel, so make sure to click the subscribe button and tap the little bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video, which we do every morning on Wednesday and Friday. See you soon.